Today we're going to be taking a bit more of a deeper look into the ASUS VG32VQ monitor. This is a 1440p monitor capable of up to 144 Hz. A lot of people have asked me to dive into its features, and I've asked a couple of different questions about it that I'd like to get into today. One of the questions I've been getting asked is whether or not this monitor will support the new PlayStation and the new Xbox. And you're in luck. This monitor will do 144 Hz, 1440p resolution through both HDMI and DisplayPort. One of the critical things for you to know is that through HDMI, while it does support full 144 Hz through HDMI at 1440p, if you scale down the resolutions or run it at any other resolution, 144 Hz may not be supported through HDMI, while it is supported through DisplayPort. So I've had this monitor for about 6 weeks now, and I've been playing Horizon Zero Dawn, Warzone, Valorant, and several other titles that I really enjoy. And I can tell you that as long as you're capable of keeping 144 frames per second, this monitor works very well. But when you start dipping into some of the lower frames per second, it kind of gives you a little bit of shadowing and maybe a little bit of motion blur that you would otherwise not want. One of the things with this is it is a VA panel, so it's going to have a little less responsiveness than an IPS panel. While it may have a little bit better color than an IPS panel, it's a bit of a trade-off from panel type to panel type. So the strengths of this monitor are, again, I've been playing for 6 weeks, haven't really noticed a whole lot of challenges or problems with the monitor. When I play Warzone, I can notice a bit more kind of shadowing and ghosting, but I'm only getting 76 to 86 frames per second. When I'm playing games like Valorant, I'm actually not getting any ghosting, but I'm able to maintain 144 FPS. So one of the strengths of this monitor is if you have a graphics card that can output 144 FPS, you're going to have no problem enjoying this monitor to its fullest potential. So while we're at it, let's dive into a couple of the features. So for today's testing and looking at the different features, we'll be using the benchmark from Horizon Zero Dawn. On the back of the screen, there's a little touchpad that allows you to kind of move around your option features. So we can kind of go through and look at the different options that it has. So from a game visual perspective, it has a scenery mode, which gives you a lot of really bright colors. A racing mode, which is a little bit easier on the eyes, cinema mode, which is for deeper colors, real-time strategy, FPS mode, sRGB mode, which is trying to match colors to as close to the accuracy as this monitor can, and MOBA mode. So these settings just give you essentially different colors that you may like to use. In the blue light filter, you have different levels of blue light filtering. So you can get all the way up to level 4, depending on how much blue light you want to filter. So if you find yourself affected by blue light a lot, that may come in handy. You also have your standard brightness, contrast, and color temperature modes that you can change. On the image settings, you have the vivid pixel feature, which ASUS says it helps enhance image outlines and reduce noise bars for crystal clear and detail-oriented viewing. Now, I haven't really played with this setting a whole lot, but it's supposed to basically just make the image sharper. The adaptive or FreeSync mode, which I have turned on, is currently working with a 980 Ti on adaptive sync mode. And it's actually working quite well, even though I don't have G-Sync support on the 980 Ti. ELMB sync, or extreme low motion blur, basically renders a black pixel between every lighting of the pixel color. This is designed to help reduce motion blur. I don't personally use it. A lot of people complain and don't really like the feature all that much. Once I'm running 144 frames per second in Warzone, I might give it a try to see if it reduces the ghosting and shadowing. I'm going to turn that setting off because I don't personally like to use it. The shadow boost mode is a technology that's designed to clarify the dark areas of the game world without overexposing brighter areas. So it's basically make your darkers dark and your brighters brighter. It's kind of like a Tide commercial. So the shadow boost level 1, level 2, and level 3. You actually can see quite a bit of brightness. It basically looks like it's just trying to decrease shadows overall. So the system has 3 inputs, 2 HDMI and 1 DisplayPort. We're currently using DisplayPort. There's also a bunch of system setup modes. So you've got your eco mode, which obviously is going to use less power and maybe give you a little less brightness. You've got language mode, so it supports multiple languages. key lock to lock out all the panel keys. And then you've got some setting favorites. So you can actually save settings as kind of like profiles that you can load and unload kind of at will if you have different settings for different games. And the monitor also has a few features when it comes to gamers. So there's actually a crosshair that you can turn on, and that gives you a crosshair in the center of your screen to work with. There's a timer, so you can actually set a game timer so that you don't play too long, anger your parents or whatnot. And then there's an FPS counter. Now, this FPS counter, if you're using FreeSync, is gonna show you the actual FPS. But if you're not using FreeSync, it's gonna be just always saying 144. I find that even though in adaptive sync mode, using the adaptive sync with the 980 Ti, it still says 144 in the frame counter, even though something like Fraps will give you your actual frame count. There's also display alignment. So if you have multiple displays, you can kind of align them up to where you need them to be. Then you have sniper practice mode, which gives you kind of the ability to practice as a sniper as to where you want to, gives you kind of a zoom, a snipe mode. Probably not something you want to use, but it's kind of cool. It's enhancing just the center of the pixels with kind of a bit of a zoom to give you a bit of a sniper mode. So obviously that's kind of like cheating, but it could come in handy. You can have up to a 2x sniper mode. So that just again is going to give you a quick box that just zooms in 2x sniper mode, which is kind of an interesting feature for a monitor, but if you're playing a game with sniper rifles, you probably don't need it. So there you have it. That's a quick rundown on the feature set for this monitor. There's not a whole lot to it. It's a monitor, so you can adjust a lot of the different settings to fit whatever you're kind of looking for your own preferences. So one of the main things to make a point of is, honestly, it's a great monitor. If you have FreeSync and you can output 140 frames per second, it's an awesome monitor for you to play your games and enjoy and have fun. But if you're really sensitive to ghosting and you're not necessarily outputting 144 frames per second, I would suggest going with an IPS panel. There is a newer version of this monitor available. It's kind of a slightly different model. It's the VG32VQ1B. It's just a newer model. This was a 2019, the 1B is a 2020. And the major differences between the two is that the 1B has a 1500R radius, which is a little bit more of an aggressive curve than the 1800R radius on this particular monitor. And then the 1B actually is capable of doing up to 165 Hertz instead of 144. So other than that, there's not really a huge difference. And I've seen this monitor on sale for really good deals over the last couple of months, off and on. So if you can snag yourself a 32-inch, 144 Hertz or higher 1440p monitor, you're gonna have a really good time. A lot of you are looking to get your hands on a new 3070 or 3080 graphics card. And if you're currently running on a 1080p monitor, running just HD, my recommendation would be look around, look at a few different monitors. Go and look at a 1440p or a 4K monitor. I think 4K is a little too high because you're still struggling to get your hertz out of those monitors. You're only getting maybe 100 frames per second on some higher end titles. So 4K for me isn't really a viable option at this point for high frames per second gaming. But 1440p seems to strike a really good balance between monitor size, pixel count, and smoothness when you're playing your games. So there's a lot of really good new monitors coming out that are 1440p that are 200, 300, or higher hertz. But if your system's not capable of outputting the frames per second to match with those frequencies, then you're really spending your money and not really getting to use all of the features. So I think that something in the range between 144 and 200 hertz, 1440p, is gonna be fantastic for running on a 3070 or a 3080, or even if you have an older card like a 2060, 2070, or 2080 Super, you will really elevate your experience by going with a 1440p monitor. And I think you'll really enjoy the size of a 32-inch monitor. I've looked at different sizes and I found that 32 is kind of that sweet spot. And I moved from a 27-inch monitor to a 32-inch monitor. And it's actually only 31.5 viewable, but I find it to be just perfect for getting that immersion that you're looking for when playing games like Horizon Zero Dawn. I also really enjoy the curve. Anything other than looking at it directly head on is really weird. Some people have also complained about a little bit of light bleed at the bottom and at the top. I have not experienced that. If you're in a very dark screen or using a very dark background wallpaper in Windows, you can see a tiny little bit of light bleed in the top and in the bottom, but it's hardly noticeable. And to be honest, when it comes to looking at all of the different monitors that are out there, this is a really good choice. I'm glad I bought it. The only thing that I wish I could do is have two of them. As always, thanks for watching. And if you give me a like or subscribe, it really helps me to build more videos and create more content that might be useful to you. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.